Okay, I was a little bit slow on the button there. Hey there, friends. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it might be where you are in your part of the world. Welcome back to the live stream. My name is Jeff Fritz, and this is C Sharp with CSharpFritz. This is a beginner-friendly discussion talking about technology, learning about a different topic each week. And I'm so glad that you're tuned in. Whether you're joining me on Learn TV, Twitch, or on YouTube, it's so good to see you. In fact, some of you are right here in the chat room, right there. How's it going there, friends? Let me say hello to the folks that are here. Hello, Kareem. Good to see you. Ryosuke, Ryosuke. Good to see you. Gabriel, Immensen, GitLab down? No. I checked the status on GitLab, GitHub. They're all up. So good to see a bunch of folks here from Iran. Trung is here from California. Art3A is dialing in from cold Russia. It's pretty cold here in Philadelphia as well. I broadcast from Philadelphia, and yeah, it's been a little chilly here. 25 Fahrenheit is what we're seeing. Warren Dixon, good morning to you. Net with the .NET bot over there on Twitch. Victor, hello. Alvaro, hola. Fire, hey yo. Jason Bach is here. Good morning to you. One Lion, how's it going there? I sound a little under the weather? No, I sound a little hoarse because I spent the weekend. I went back to school. I had tickets to Pennsylvania State University. We call them Penn State here. They had an American football game this weekend playing against those always tough Scarlet Knights from Rutgers University. And I had some pretty good seats on the 25-yard line and spent a better part of Saturday cheering and yelling my head off and having a fantastic time at the game. So, yeah, I got a little scratchy going on here, not going to lie. How you doing there, Herbert? Good to see you. Eduardo in Costa Rica. Rodrigo in Chile. Good to see you. Kareem, oh my gosh, you love my courses. Thank you so much. Ricardo from Jamaica. Hello. Marcelo, hello. Capil, how's it going there? R. Blake, good afternoon to you in Germany. Ryosuke in Japan. Yeah, it's a good reason to be a little hoarse, a little scratchy there. Jose, hello to you in Brazil. Farhad, hello. Pieter, let's see what's up. We're going to have some fun learning a little bit about the basics of Entity Framework Core today. Let me see. VJ, good to see you. Good evening to you in India. Why check for overflow, underflow? I don't know what you're referring to. Wizards. Wizard, yeah. Tukis, hello to you in Harrisburg. Askar, how's it going there? Michael Wright in Lynchburg, Virginia. Kareem, do my courses support .NET 6? Everything that you can do with them, it should work in .NET 6. I don't have specific updates for .NET 6 out there. Or things that target .NET 6 specific features. Hello, Anderson in Brazil. Is that Kumbaka in Indonesia? Jens is here from Denmark. Rodrigo's going to be visiting Philadelphia in February. Hope you have a great time. Make sure you get a cheesesteak while you're in town, and don't forget a Philly soft pretzel. Check out Philly Soft Pretzel Factory while you're in town. They make really good soft pretzels. Best soft pretzels I've had outside of Germany. Iqbal, hello to you in London. Distinguished Moments, hey there in Sweden. Bendy Tool, hello. Learn with Code, Santosh from Malaysia. How's it going there? Good evening to you, Abith Balan. I'm sorry, I can't read the script. Hello to you in Saudi Arabia. Jayakumar, good evening to you in India. Yes, I will be talking about Entity Framework Core 6. I'm not going to talk about any 6 specific features. I might touch on them briefly, but I'm not going to go deep on those, only because the things that were really added aren't things that beginners see and use. Compiling, maybe, but even then, we want to get folks started. We want to get you on the right foot. A lot of the features that were added as part of Entity Framework Core 6 are a bit more intermediate advanced techniques and things that'll optimize and improve the way that you work with your database. So we're not going to dig down into those. but everything we're going to show you will work with Entity Framework Core 6. How you doing there, Mustafa Lal Niemi in Iraq? Sukdeep in Toronto. Hello. Binbur in Austria. Bruno Carlos, you updated your API from .NET 5 to 6, but you had no performance gains. There's things you may need to be tuning in there without seeing more of your context. The straight update should have gotten you something, but without seeing all of your code, it's going to be hard to tell where the gap is there. Hey there, Cuba Kid. Yeah, Entity Framework 6 is where we're Entity Framework Core 6. So, Bruno's in Brazil. Adam's here from Czech Republic. Oh, thank you for joining me this afternoon for the stream. How you doing there, Den? Good evening. VJ, need a demo on repository pattern using Entity Framework. We can talk about that today. I think that's fine. I think we can definitely get into that. Auto migration as well. I don't have demos set up for that, but right, it's insured database. I forget exactly the method. We'll go dig it up. DAO 36 for 20 years. Time you modernized. Yeah, a little bit Inksaver. Yeah. If the technology you're using is old enough that it's legal to go drinking, you may want to consider upgrading. Not necessarily a need, but you may want to consider upgrading. I think you're going to find performance benefits, support benefits, security, and taking advantage of all the latest technologies that are out there, because it has been 20 years. You're definitely going to see benefit from upgrading. Warren's here from Zambia. VJ, can we implement unit of work with Entity Framework? Well, Entity Framework is very unit of work structured. So no, I'm not going to go into temporal tables, Oren. That is a bit more advanced, and it is a very SQL Server specific feature of Entity Framework. I'm not going to be getting into it. Sorry about that. There's a great session from my friend Jeremy Lickness from .NET Conf. You can watch that out on YouTube, where he talks about how to get started with that. Working with Arthur Vickers, showing exactly how to use temporal tables. I will not cover that today. Will I cover either data first approach or code first? I will be focusing on code first, but I will show how you can do data first as well. How you doing there in Argentina? Is that Zaur MTG? Any resources docs about managing complex database graphs, context pooling? See, that's a little bit further than let's get folks started with this. I will not be covering that. Check out our friend Jeremy Lickness, who has a weekly, not weekly, he does, is he every other week or once a month? He does a stand-up for the Entity Framework team live on these channels. Twitch.tv/Visual Studio, youtube.com/.net. You'll find more about that there. Check out live.net, and you'll see our schedule for all of those community stand-ups. And Jeremy answers all kinds of in-depth advanced questions like that over on that show. DAO is still acceptable. Depends on how much database interaction your app does. I would strongly recommend getting off of COM if you're still if you intend to use Windows 10, Windows 11, Windows Server, anything in the last any of the Windows servers in the last 10 years. I would definitely recommend getting off of those. The technology is better, security is better maintained, and you're going to be able to take advantage of latest web features. Things like HTTP2 you can't use with DAO and using classic ASP on a web server. It's just not supported. Comments about migrations in a Docker container. See, that's a little bit too far, Art3A. And we haven't talked about containers at all and how you can integrate and use containers there. Borsoft is from Turkey asking, what do I think about temporal tables? Are they really necessary? Temporal tables solve a problem that we used to work around by building time basis tables. So they've taken that feature and they've made it a feature of they've taken that architecture and made it a feature of the database. You see this happen with a number of popular architectures that happen in database structures. They bubble up and become a feature of the database, and then they become faster, easier to use, and you have SQL clauses that make it easier to go through and use those. Are they really necessary? No. Are you going to be able to use those and interact with them faster than if you were to make your own time-based tables? Probably, yeah. Without seeing the way that you're querying and interacting with data, I can't affirmatively, I can't positively say that, but I would bet if you ran a couple of simple challenges, a couple of simple tests, you'd be able to tease out and figure out exactly the benefit of it for you. Hey there, Geek Girl. Your boss got bit by old code. Yeah. Upgrading to support SSL. Yeah. TLS 1.3, not supported on those older technologies because they're not supported. They're not being maintained. Any possibility of C++ and Visual Studio for Mac? Not my area of specialty. I would defer to my friend John Galloway, who'd be able to help you with that question. Can I compare Entity Framework performance against straight SQL client using stored procedures? With Entity Framework 6, according to the performance charts we're seeing, they're similar. And really, you only want to be using stored procs when you're doing more complex data calculations, set arithmetic. So you can hand off some of that responsibility to your friends, the database administrators. Let them handle that and give you optimize and give you back a better interaction, a better tuned query. How you doing there, Surly Dev over on Twitch? On Twitch, Yen says, when will my RavenDB blog post be online? Yeah, I was out of town this weekend on holiday. I'm actually doing another stream later today at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. What is that? 2200 UTC, teaching right here on these same channels. We'll be teaching about Blazor, building your first Blazor application with my good friend John Galloway. We're gonna have a great time talking about walking through the first Learn module, build that basic to-do app, get you started with learning about Blazor, answering questions, and going through all the getting started notes for Blazor. Let's see there. ADO.net. Oh, see, DAO, the old data access objects. Yeah, that's from like 1997. ADO.net, yeah, you're fine working with ADO.net. You're all right. Yes, but we should retire COM objects. You're trying to learn C#. You have a book, Visual C# Step by Step, 9th edition. What are my thoughts? That's fine to get you started. At some point, you're going to want to keep up by following blog posts and the documentation, because we release new updates every year now. So you're going to want to convert over to using that. What's new in Entity Framework 6? There's a blog post out there you can check out that tells you more about that. Any benchmarks on Entity Framework 6 versus Dapper? They're pretty close. Entity Framework 6 is just a little bit slower than Dapper, but it's pretty close. It's not better than Dapper, no. How you doing there, Eddie Dre? Let's see. But then again, Dapper solves a different problem than Entity Framework 6. Future of .NET with respect to Node.js. .NET is 4 to 10 times faster than Node.js, according to the Tech Empower benchmarks. That's all I need to say about that. How to use Entity Framework Core with SQLite in Blazor WebAssembly. Those are things that don't go together. When you're using Blazor WebAssembly, and this is a bit off track, when you're using Blazor WebAssembly, that's code that runs in the browser. You can't use Entity Framework to write to a database on disk. in the browser. Doesn't work like that. You can't do that. You don't have access to that. When you're building an app with Blazor WebAssembly, all WebAssembly abides by the same governance rules as JavaScript and the JavaScript sandbox. You can't write to disk. You don't have rights to that, so you can't do that interaction. Please don't repeat yourselves on YouTube. We had a significant problem with that last time, and I will ban folks for repeating there. Yes, Jens, I'll get my glasses on here in a second. Morning coffee and lurking, same here. I've got to have coffee here. How you doing there, Max Play? Good to see you. Generic typed repository. See, I'd like some of these intro questions that get us started, get us warmed up here. Generic typed repository pattern with EF Core or not? And that's T. Jake Vlad's. I love the generic repository pattern. I'm a big fan of using that. You can definitely do it with Entity Framework Core. It's going to solve all of your generic, your simple CRUD interactions. Your create, read, update, and delete interactions with one table, with one object that you're going to be working with. And being able to have those 4 methods for all of your various objects that you're persisting to the database just done and generated for you, and not even generated is the wrong word, built and implemented for you generically. Very handy thing. Very, very handy. Then when you need to go and change how you interact with your database, and you can do it in one place, and it just trickles down, and all of your database interactions receive that same update. That's a beautiful thing. That's kind of why we as object-oriented programmers really appreciate abstract-based classes and how we can interact with those. Victor tried to search for an ORM as full-featured as EF Core in any language, could not find a single one. Folks will tell you to take a look at Hibernate or NHibernate, but EF Core is definitely pretty advanced. IndexedDB is it's a different. It's a different way to interact with data storing in the browser. You're right, one lion. But it's not Entity Framework. It's different. Will I touch on OData APIs with EF? No, because OData gets into ASP.NET Core, and we're not working with that today. We're working with just Entity Framework. When will we get the official release of Visual Studio 2022? 2 weeks ago. How's that? It's out. You can work with it. How to approach DSA? What's a DSA problem? Help me out with the context there. Mohammed on YouTube. Night Snipe, how you doing there? Do developers at Microsoft not use the Open with VS Code option in a folder? Yes, we do. Why make it a 2-click process in Windows 11? Please don't confuse. There are 2 different divisions that you see at work there. There is the folks from Windows 11. There's the folks from the developer division that make all the developer tools. When Windows 11 organizes and sets up the right-click context menus, that's how they made these features available. So, different. But why is it 2 clicks? Have to ask the Windows folks. Darkstar asks, is this a replay? At 9:24 a.m. Eastern Time on November 22nd, 2021. Yeah, it might be a replay. I think it might be. I think it's a replay. Definitely a replay. All right. Does it make sense to define data using on-model creating if the database already has data? No, it does not, Ivan. No. You're going to be reseeding data at that point. No. Is MongoDB supported in Entity Framework? No. Max Play is working at the moment on a project, and I have tried to migrate my database on run, and it didn't work. I have done context database migrate. Once again, need more context. I don't have all the specifics there. Alvaro says, do I have advice on using unit of work to save changes and repository pattern? Or do I have advice using transactions? Well, you're going to be using... Entity Framework is going to give you transaction capabilities. You just need to I'm not quite sure what you're looking for. All the questions around unit of work. What are you looking for here? I'm not quite sure. Yeah. Yes, Jose, we will be talking about migrations. Rizwan, will I show NoSQL data access with Entity Framework? No. We're staying very basic, and we're going to use SQLite, which has good equivalents in SQL Server, Postgres, MySQL, Oracle, DB2. Oh, my friends from IBM, we're going to show you could use this with DB2. Is that okay? I don't know if the IBM folks are hearing me, but that's okay. Data structures and algorithms. So what was the question again? One viewer asked for a Visual Studio 2022 release date. When will we get this? Yeah, it's already released. Hey there, Napalm. Nevermind 40. Why C#? Really? Really? .NET is the fastest framework available for you to build web applications out there. It's C# allows you to build applications that run on every platform out there, whether it's IoT, mobile devices, tablets, desktop applications, cloud applications, websites, distributed applications. C# and .NET 6 are the fastest commercially supported framework out there that you can use to take your code and run it anywhere you want. Check it out. That's my sale. There you go. Any idea about GitHub Copilot support for Visual Studio? Gonna have to ask the GitHub folks for that. Philadelphia does have a lot of museums. Yes, Nikhil. The art museum is fantastic. The armory in there is amazing. When I was a kid, just seeing all the suits of armor, swords and things in there, it's just very, very cool. There's a Rodin museum there as well. Beautiful works from Rodin there. Sometimes we have to write raw SQL. For example, if a table or database becomes parametric, working with Entity Framework 5 and old versions. That was so hard. What about Entity Framework 6? Still available the same way. Didn't make much of a change there. I'm not sure by what you mean by it was so hard. What's the best way to see data with Entity Framework Core 6? Write a see data method and interact with on-model creating is where I like to go with that. How to approach data structures and algorithms problems. Once again, context. I'm not sure what you're looking for. I'm sorry. New to Entity Framework, do you have to scaffold databases in order to use Entity Framework, or can you plug it into an existing DB? DB asks ads $3.99.39 on YouTube. Yes, you can. I will show you how to do that in just a little bit. Is it possible to use Entity Framework with... I have no idea what that is. I'm sorry. Yeah, use Safe Changes Async as your unit of work. Yeah, absolutely, Dries. What's the fastest database like MongoDB, which EF can support? MySQL, MariaDB, Postgres. Postgres is really the one that the Tech Empower folks standardize on. Let's access data with that data access. Yes. Can we run C# code as SQL trigger code? Depends on your database provider. Varun on YouTube. Napalm once used Entity Framework with DB2. It worked for their needs. Exactly. So basically, EF is for relational databases, asks Sebastian on YouTube. Yes, it will work with Cosmos DB. There was work to try and get it working with NoSQL databases. Honestly, I recommend using the native APIs, the native packages for interacting with those NoSQL databases. For relational databases, Entity Framework slays. It's really, really good. Might be that some people don't understand scope unit of work with Entity Framework, which highlights larger application problems. Yes, that larger architecture problems. Mohammed, you keep asking the same question. I don't understand what you're asking. How to approach data structure and algorithms problems. I would go research what data structure you're trying to create, and algorithm where you're trying to go and work there. Yes, math is important. Absolutely. Did what finally beat Go? Why C# maybe from the Java team? Java has a board that organizes and approves and deploys updates to the framework and language. It takes a little bit of time for things to get through there. It's not exactly a similar structure to how C# is evolving. Richard, thanks so much for that contribution. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Really appreciate the fine contribution to elevate, to raise the interaction over here on YouTube. And you're just proving my statements about YouTube 100% correct. That's right. Jose says C# is present in games as well, like Unity and Xbox apps. Is Blazor the future? I think Blazor is amazing, and I would absolutely continue using Blazor for future applications. Cosmos DB Gremlin graph to SQL. I'm not sure what you mean by that. So we can make both. I'm not familiar with Gremlin. How to bulk insert lots of data without change tracking. Change tracking slowing down insert speed. Isn't there bulk insert? I thought there was bulk insert commands. Entity framework. I thought there was a bulk insert that you could do. I thought there was a way to do that without the save changes. Entity Framework Extensions provides a bulk insert method. Good for them. I haven't done too many bulk operations with Entity Framework. Come on. Yeah, folks are going and building their own thing that is effectively calling the insert statements directly. Not terrible to execute SQL statements that call the insert statements directly. Yeah, I think that would be the way I would go. That makes sense. Totally makes sense to me. Let me head back over here to chat. Is Link to SQL, Farside on Twitch asks, is Link to SQL and Entity Framework the same thing but different? No, very different. Link to SQL is a technology that was released in 2008 that was deprecated very quickly in favor of Entity Framework because Link to SQL was very focused on just interacting with SQL Server. Entity Framework is a much more mature and evolved framework that you can work with. Mohammed, I'm bold, uppercase, asking the same question again and again. Thank you. Thank you, Nightbot. Yeah. And I see a handful of other folks there. Goodbye. And yeah. We're going to clean up YouTube a little bit here. Thanks so much. All right. Is EF Core optimized for Blazor? Asks Chief. Two different things. Is it okay to use Entity Framework 6 in the same project without creating separate APIs for smaller web apps? Sure. Why not? Web Forms is not the future. Sorry. It's not in .NET 6. Yeah, there's a number of folks that build extensions for bulk inserts, but they're executing directly. You'd love to read the Forza 3 game code. It was written in C# and it's your favorite racing game. Yeah, see, it's typically game code is proprietary. They don't publish that. You don't need to know math deeply, no. To become a software developer, no. Bulk insert from a stored proc that would import a 15,000 line CSV before you could blink. Cool. Is it okay to use React.js with .NET and Entity Framework to get a job? Yeah, absolutely. Entity Framework helps you on the server side when you're building web applications to interact with your database. You can use ASP.NET then to make an API available that React, Angular, Vue can interact with Blazor and paint information on the screen. Bulk insert is possible. Yeah, Entity Framework core bulk insert. Why didn't I see a thing on that when I bingled for it? Only because it's not a technique. It's not something that I do. In EF Core, how do you create a new database and apply all the existing migrations you have previously created on older databases? I'll show you that in a minute there, Philippe. Trying to make a career shift into C# development, confident with syntax. What are a couple practical beginner intermediate projects I recommend you try next? Asks It's Tiny Bubbles. Build your own blog engine, or build your own RSS reader for a mobile device, depending on what type of application you want to get involved with. That would be where I would go next. Good. And can I explain the advantages of using include then include versus querying the related table directly and taking the result? Asks T. Jake Valades. I'm not sure if that's. It looks like it's either your Eastern European your name, or it looks like it's. I'm not quite sure. Somebody English doing something with their name Jake. It's a matter of how many queries you connect to the database. So we'll show that in a little bit also. Which data access layer do I prefer to use with? It's Blazor. You keep misspelling it here. I use OpenAPI with that. No, I cannot help with your assignments. I'm happy to help folks learn about technologies, but I will not do your assignments. I will not help you with assignments because that's your learning experience. I will not answer questions and answer folks' homework assignments here. Sorry, that's for you to learn. EF6 and minimal API are a good combination. That's right, Drees. Hey, Chris Jones. Can you mix versions of Entity Framework Core in a solution? No, you cannot. You'll run into a problem. Is there a good example repository showcases how one would architect a Blazor server-side application? Yes, check out the, what is it, .NET, oh my gosh, why am I blanking on this? The workshops are out there on GitHub. It is, if I start typing this, it'll probably come up. Actually, the .NET books do this as well. No, I'm not hitting it. Is it .NET/architecture? .NET-architecture? Yeah. There's a bunch of reference apps out here that you can get to on the .NET architecture repository that will help you not just with server side, but interact with and show you other ways you can use .NET. Ian asks, should I learn Xamarin Forms if I want to learn Maui? You can jump right into Maui now, but appreciate that it's not going to be production ready for a few more months. Hey there, Raja. Oh, thank you so much. Good to see you. Appreciate you tuning in on YouTube. I'm going to finish getting through these questions real quick, and we will jump over and start talking about code. In fact, I'm going to pause that for a second. Let me get the music playing in the background. This is Stream Beats from Harris Heller. This is music that's been designed to be royalty-free, DMCA-free. Listen to it wherever you'd like, whether it's YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, doesn't matter. Completely available for you to use and listen to. You can even download the songs and listen to them on your mobile device if you just want to groove along to them wherever you might be. Check it out, streambeats.com. There's playlists for Amazon Music, Apple Music, and Spotify. And like I said, you can even download the music as well. Thank you so much to Harris Heller for making this music available for us to listen to today. All right, get the gunners on here. Getting close here. Struggled a lot with configuring EF Core on Mac OS, but nothing went the way I wanted. Can't do migrate DB. Couldn't even use SQLite. That's not a compatibility issue. That sounds like you got something misconfigured there on your machine, Wild Rift Team Turkey. Something else is not configured right there on your... Oh, wait a sec. M1 Mac OS. The ARM64 Mac OS. You need to drop into compatibility mode because I don't think SQLite has the ARM64 has the ARM64 version available. But compatibility with that Mac chip is something the team is working as quickly as possible on. But you know what? It's not being made easy to work with those devices and that technology. They're getting there, but it's taking time. Ahmad asks, would we be able to call... This is off topic. Would we be able to call an API from Razor or Blazor like Ajax in JavaScript? Yes. Check out some of my Blazor sessions on that. On YouTube, look at the Beginner's Guide to Blazor. Go to blazor.net. Check my video series from there is another way to get to that same thing. And you can do the exact same thing. I'm not going to go any further into it. I've got videos showing how to do that. Doing an insert and passing an entire range on the insert statement. Sure. So you're not calling insert for each one. Yes, that works. If you're calling save changes after each insert, oh gosh, that is slow. Yes. Call it once at the end, but that's still not a bulk insert. I would execute SQL and call the insert statement directly. How you doing there, Raja? I think I already said hello to you. I'm sorry. Will I talk about EF or EF Core? We're talking about EF Core. Is EF Entity Framework Core compatible with Postgres? Asks James on YouTube. Yes, it is. There are packages you can download and install to work with that. I'll show you that in a little bit. We'll go and search NuGet and show some of that. Yeah, a bunch of EF connectors out there. Am I working today? Yes, we will be. I'm answering questions from chat, getting things warmed up before we get into this. This is broadcast in 3 places. Yes, you can use Blazor components in an Angular app because you can, from JavaScript, you can instantiate Blazor components. Is it possible to use React components inside of Blazor? See, off topic, yes, you can. These are new gunners. These are the Gunner Razor torpedoes. And I really like them. I love the wraparound. No seams there. Feels really good. Let me see here. Yeah, rollback if inserts fail. Yes. Am I a proponent of clean architecture? Yes. Any update about missing RDLC report designer? No. I haven't heard anything yet. Will EF shadow properties become available in EF6 at some point? Shadow properties? I'm not familiar with that term. Is it comfortable using Linux for C# developers? Absolutely. We spent the whole month of October here on this stream, in this show, building with C# live on a Linux machine, right on the metal, and it was fantastic. We're going to finish reading this. We are almost there. I'm skipping Farsight's question there on Twitch. Thank you so much, Daniel. Appreciate the very kind words. That's a topic for a different stream, Farsight. Happy to talk about that over on my channel. Now that we're more than a year removed, happy to talk about it. Angular, React, Blazor. Check the manual that corresponds. Godfrey, I have no idea context of that. Sorry. posting error messages into chat, I can't help you with. I'm sorry. Let's see. Is it possible to debug XAML on Linux? No. Because XAML works with WPF and it works with .NET MAUI. Both of them are not supported on Linux right now. Yeah, I'm sorry. I haven't seen the concept of shadow property with Entity Framework Core. Like, oh, these. Okay. All right. I know what this is. I don't like to use them. But yes, you can do that. It is available with Entity Framework 6. I'm not going to get into that type of thing today. That's a little bit more advanced than I want to get into. Yes, I am going to discuss migrations. I'm not going to talk about the migration bundler, though. Kyung asks, should I use stored procedures or handle everything with code? Depends. What are the changes in .NET 6 Web API compared to .NET 5? Sorry, not talking about Web API today. That's off topic. All right, moving on. We're going to talk about Entity Framework 6, Entity Framework Core 6 today. We're going to get into nothing that's Entity Framework Core 6 specific. Everything we're going to do today works in Entity Framework Core 5. There's a couple things that are from Entity Framework Core 5 and newer, but just about everything will work in older versions of Entity Framework and even over on Entity Framework for folks on .NET Framework. All right. Let's get started. Let's get into this. I think the music's a little bit quiet. No, I think that's all right. Let's get ready to get over to the other set where I've got the teleprompter. I've got everything all set up to go there. It's not like an Oracle pseudo column. No, it's a way for you to hide some of those properties, some of those things that are specific to the database that you don't really need as part of your objects inside of C#. You can interact with it. You use Dapper. You loved Link to SQL. Dapper's fine. I mean, you can still use Dapper to bring back and hydrate objects and then query through it. It's just a question of how you interact with that. Relying on indexing and integrity checks in a database for validating data that is being imported in bulk is not an optimal strategy. Right. When folks talk about bulk inserts are, I've got 1 million records sitting over here in a file in another database, and I need to get them into that other database over there. I need to do a bulk insert and just get them in there. We'll clean the data when it arrives. We'll scrub it. We'll do all the things to make sure that it's proper for my application. I don't care about integrity or relation to other tables. I just want to get it onto that database machine so I can then use the power of that database system to manipulate it, scrub it, clean it, and put it into its final resting place, in its final table, where it'll actually be used by the application. I typically do a bulk insert into some sort of temporary table, pseudo-temporary table. I'll name it ZZ underscore upload new contacts or something like that. And that's where I'm just loading data. My database administrator knows that it's somewhere off to the side that I'm working with, and then we'll come back and load things up from there. Happy to see SQLite now working with .NET 6 EF Core. Oh yeah. The demo showcases converting SQLite 3 Linux to WebAssembly. I do not have that link. No, I'm not doing a series on Entity Framework. No, I'm doing one intro today. Yeah, bulk inserts as a data update tool. So, right, somebody gives you a file, you get a CSV that has a couple million records in it. It's hundreds of meg, maybe a gig or two, and you need to get them into the database. Yeah, you're doing a bulk insert. You're reading all of those and just put them into a table somewhere and then deploy from there. Then update and put them in the appropriate places. The folks at Stack Overflow did create the Dapper database tool. Yes. All right. I'm ready to go. Let's get started. Let's go over to the other scene and let's get things ready. Let's do the thing and talk about Entity Framework for those of you that are beginners, that are just getting started and want to talk about how to interact with data with your .NET application. Let's head over, start working over there. Moving over. Over to the other machine. Hello, I'm over here now. Oh, and I've got my filter turned up too high from when I was Clippy last week. Yes, I was Clippy last week, and it was amazing. For those of you that didn't see me, I was dressed up as our friend, the paperclip office assistant Clippy, and it was pretty spectacular. We were having a very fun time. With me dressed up as a full-size human paperclip with funny eyes and everything. That's better. Now I'm not half faded out because I'm not wearing my green screen suit today. Yes, I have a green screen suit, and it was pretty fun. Not gonna lie, it was a lot of fun. So, taking a look here, let me scroll through. Tutorial on third-party payment integration? No. That's completely off topic. Sorry, that's not my bag. I don't get into that. Responsibility of clean data was on the customer. Yeah, sorry. Can we improve Entity Framework performance using bulk save changes? It's a different thing. And once again, I don't know the context of how you're interacting with Entity Framework. Let's get in and let's get folks started who are beginners working with this. I am out on GitHub. I have these samples available to you that you can check out. You can download and interact with. GitHub.com, CSharpFritz, C# with CSharpFritz. Check it out. You can go there, drop down into sessions. We are in season 1, and we are looking at Entity Framework Core today. And I've got a README here with a little bit written up. I did not finish writing the whole thing. I get down here and it's like, all right, go into the demos for these things. But there is a demo application that you can go into, and we're going to talk more about that today. So you can go grab that link, C# with CSharpFritz, and you'll be able to download the samples and get started. All right. So let me see. It says there's more new messages, but I don't see any more. Okay, good. Can Entity Framework read access database file my uncle's company is built on? Yes, should be able to. That's Jet database. You just need to provide the appropriate provider for it, and it should load it. I haven't read access with that in a very long time. Certainly not with EF Core, but I know on Entity Framework 6 with .NET Framework, it does. All right. Gotta have the coffee. Gotta have the coffee in me. Let's head back over here. Let's talk about Entity Framework Core and data interactions. So, many of you, it sounds like, already know and have been working with Entity Framework for a long time here. Where we want to go today, let me get that refreshed. There we go. Where we want to go today, where we want to work with our tools here, for those of you who are getting started, who are new to the topic, we want to be able to interact with the data in a relational database. So that's something like SQL Server, MySQL, MariaDB, Postgres, SQLite, right? Oracle, DB2, all of those relational databases where you're working with tables of data and records that live inside those tables. We want to make sure that you can interact with them from C# in the same way that you would work with other classes, other instances of objects. This pattern is called an object relational mapper. That's the generic name for this tool that will take those relational databases and turn them into objects that you're going to be able to reference from C# code. So we're going to do that interaction. We're going to show you how to make that connection and be able to read, write, delete data, update data very quickly and easily from your C# code using Entity Framework Core. So we can create an application and we can get started by adding these 3 packages to a project in order to get the tools that we need to interact with the database. And for these demos, to make sure that these are available for most folks to be able to interact with, I'm installing and using SQLite. SQLite is that file-based database that you can use whether you're on Windows, Mac, Linux, iOS, Android. There's folks that deploy and run SQLite databases on all kinds of different operating systems, and we're going to make sure that you can do that from Entity Framework as part of today's session. All right. So these 3 packages right here. Microsoft Entity Framework Core, Microsoft Entity Framework Core Tools, Microsoft Entity Framework Core SQLite will get you started. So I already have a project sitting here on disk, but I want to do a little bit of live coding. I want to go through and build a bit of this live, and we'll come back and reference that sample that's already there. So let's create a brand new project, brand new console application, and we'll go through and start building this. So I'm going to say .NET new console application. I'm going to write this out to a folder. I can't scroll up because it's a little bit wide here. Let's just call this. I'm going to build a blog. So let's call this My Blog App. Okay. So it's creating a little console application called My Blog App. I'm in this folder now. Get us back up to the top there. And this is a .NET 6 application, so my program file is really, really short. Let's start putting some of our packages in here so we can work with Entity Framework Core. So .NET add package, Microsoft, and it's behind me there. Microsoft Entity Framework Core. And it's adding that right now. Look at it go! All right. And we need tools. There it is. And we want the SQLite version. So we get the SQLite provider now. SQLite is one of the providers that Microsoft makes available. There are vendors that make other providers available that you can use to build and work with Entity Framework. So, really? So I am going to bring up here, we can look for, right, Oracle. There's an Oracle provider, right? Oracle Managed Data Access. You see right there, Oracle Entity Framework Core. There are packages available for folks who want to use MySQL. There you go, right there. Somebody was asking about Postgres earlier. Sure, there's Postgres available as well. NPG SQL is the one that I really like using. Very, very cool. That helps you get connected to your Postgres database. DB2. I keep mentioning DB2. Somebody mentioned that they use DB2. Link to DB2. So there you go. Stuff from IBM to get you in and running. So no matter what database you're using, and of course Microsoft has a SQL Server. package available so you can work with SQL Server. Okay. So all kinds of providers available, and I'll show you how you can configure a provider appropriate for your application when you start integrating and using Entity Framework here. So by adding these couple of packages now, I have the tools, some of the tools, that I can interact with. Yes, that's right, SQLite is free. It's free, it's open source, anybody can download and use it. No, MongoDB is not relational. So, where was I? Oh, installing, there's another block of tools that we should talk about. .NET EF Core Tools. Yes. So, there are a series of command line tools that you need for Entity Framework that will help you to do some of the actions folks were asking about a little bit earlier that allow you to scaffold a database. Take my code and build the database appropriate to store those things that I've defined with Entity Framework in my C# code. And you can go the other way. Here's my database out there. Let's generate the code appropriate for me to work with the database. Those tools are available here on the command line. Where is it? I want to... It is available in Visual Studio, but you can also... Let me make sure I have the latest version of the tools here. .NET-EF. So I'm going to go back over here to my console. Clear this. So .NET Tool Update Global .NET EF. Whenever there's a new version of .NET, you're going to want to run this to make sure you have the latest version installed. Look at that. I had to update this machine from EF5 to EF6. Fantastic. So EF, that's what we abbreviate Entity Framework Core to, is just EF. I had to update it, so we're good to go. We're ready to work with the latest version there. No, I'm insane, and that's off topic. Can I touch on Design Time DB Context Factory? No, I'm sorry, I'm not going to get into that. EF Core Power Tools is an extension you consider vital to speed up data access development, focus on functional aspects of the system. So Power Tools are available out there for folks to use. Yes, folks have written all kinds of extensions to allow you to interact and write database queries and interactions better and have more insight into what's going on. Let's get folks started and get a little bit into this. Identity resolution. What do you mean by that? Well, when I have an identity key and how it calculates it, I can show you a little bit of that. Why did that pop up? Oh, I know why that popped up. I know why that popped up. These are still on over here. Okay. Pardon me. All right. Yeah, this is Entity Framework for beginners. Folks are asking some pretty advanced questions in here. No, we're not going to... will SQL temporal tables become standard with EF Core? They're available with it for folks that are using the SQL Server provider. That feature isn't available in all databases, so it ships with it. It ships in our long-term supported version, so it's available. You can use it. All right, let's get in. Let's talk about building our first database object and how we do the interaction from code to the database and back and forth. So let me go back over to here. When you want to make a connection to the database with Entity Framework Core, you use something called a database context, or we abbreviate it to DB context. And this is that gateway. Okay, you're going to create a class that implements, that is a descendant of DB context, that has your tables, your objects that you want to connect and store as tables defined in there. And we'll see how that's done in just a second. Now, when you create your database context first, not the database, right? You create your database context and say, well, these are the types of things that I want to store. That's called code first. When you go the other way and you have a database already existing and you extract that definition and class hierarchy, you generate C# code from the database. That's called data first. And there's ways to use those command line tools that I just updated to do both sets of interactions. Let's start with the code first approach. This is the approach that many folks that are building a brand new application use to interact with and start building things. So let's define a class that we're going to store in a table, and I'm going to define a blog post. And when we look at this, this looks like some of the properties, some of the things that make sense that you want to store for a blog post. You're building a blog application. These are things that you want to store in a table, right? I want to know the title of it, when it was published, the content, the actual body of the blog post. Maybe there's some other things that'll come along later. If it's all from my blog, I don't need to know who the author is. It's me, so I don't need to store the author. It's all written by me on my blog. So that's not bad. We can use this as a first entry to generate some content for this. So let me go grab that. I'm going to open up my blog app here. Let's create a new file. And let's call this blog post CS. I'm going to define a namespace here, my blog app. And I'll just paste in, there's my blog post. Right there. Okay. So I'm using C# 10 syntax here. File scope namespace statement up there. Here's my blog post. Real easy to see and work with. And that application should still build. I'll run it down here. Come on. Let's drop into my blog app. And .NET build. And it should, of course, build because this is .NET 6, C# 10. There it is, building. Okay. And it's got nullable turned on there. I'm going to turn nullable off. Okay. And you're not gonna let me close that, are you? There we go. 0 warnings, 0 errors because I turned off nullables. All right. Let's take that blog post and let's store it in a database. Let's put it somewhere now when we start creating blog posts. So we do that by creating a database context. And it's real simple to build the database context. It looks like this. Look, it's a class and it has these properties that are of type dbSet with whatever object you want to store, and then some name for that property. And this name is going to be the name of our database table that we interact with. And it's got a get set on the end of it because you're going to be getting and setting data on that collection. So let's grab this, and I'm going to quickly create a, let's call it app.db context. I'll do the same thing, namespace, my blog app. Thank you so much. Okay, so there it is. I'll build one more time, and it should still build or not. Oh, I'm missing my using statements. I'm missing my using statements. No. No, no, no. Using Microsoft. Why am I not seeing Entity Framework Core? Thank you. And reload window. Since I installed those packages, let's get everything running here. I see a bunch of messages coming in on chat. Let me see if I can scroll down and pick up there. What do I need to use stored procedures in code first? We'll get there. I'll show you that. You're new in computer science. Where should I start? In class. Should we use datetime or datetime offset? Daytime offset is what we recommend now. Why did I disable nullable? I didn't want to get into some of the issues that raises and some of the corrections that need to be built around that right now. I wanted to get right to it. Do you want to change the table definition from a class to a record class when code first? No. I would disagree that Free Code Camp is a good place to start. I would suggest that you need to get some foundation in class, going and learning where they want to go, where they're teaching, before you. And absolutely, I encourage you to learn C#. Learn a tool, learn a technology. Start in class. Learn a little bit about data structures and algorithms. Then we can get into programming languages. What are the pros and cons of code first and DB first? Asks, is that Xerx on YouTube? So building, like I am here, code first. Not bad when I don't really have a database administrator hanging out there that I'm working with. I'm not deploying this to a big production database that already has a bunch of guidelines, a bunch of constraints on it, security things being built. When I'm building that greenfield application, that new application, new database that you're working with, code first works great. Fantastic to get you started and build that first iteration of here's what your database is. As your database and your application matures and you start to hire and have folks that serve as a database administrator, perform those daily operations tasks, interacting with your database, tuning it, improving indexing, setting up scheduled jobs, partitioning tables. They're doing all these things to improve the uptime, the maintainability of your database. That's when you want to move to database first, because there's all kinds of things that are being done out there to optimize the database and to make sure that the database runs for a very long time. That type of brownfield application, an application that's running, that you're building for a database that already exists and has a lot of configuration on it, you want to build database first, where you're going to generate your C# constructs from that existing database. So, but once you get connected and you have that working, you'll be, and you know how to regenerate code from the database, you're going to be in fantastic shape to grow and have your application advance in technology with the growth of your database. No, Entity Framework Core does not have EDMX now. Nope. So, all right. Thank you so much. I see a couple folks helping out, answering questions there. Appreciate that. So I have my database context here. When I want to get that connected now to the database, I need to provide a connection string. I need to specify, here's the type of provider that you're using, the type of database that you're going to connect to, and here's where and how to connect to it. And that connection string, right, is typically some really long string. If you're connecting to a database like SQL Server or Oracle or MySQL or Postgres, it's going to include something like an IP address or a host name of where that database server is, some credentials, a user ID and password, and exactly what database schema to connect to and start interacting with. I'm working with just SQLite here. Install the EF tools. Yes, I did that already. So I'm just going to write a little onConfiguring method here that allows me to connect in and use one of the features of Entity Framework. Here, format that. Thank you. And specify my connection string right here. Now, onConfiguring is a method inside the database context. So onConfiguring is a place for me to say, hey, here's extra configuration information that I'm defining specific to this database context. Now, there's other ways when you get into ASP.NET, or you're building and deploying a WinForms or WPF application, that you can specify where to get this connection string from, how to configure and make that entity framework context, that database context, how to make that available to the rest of the application. You would use tools, techniques like service locator, dependency injection to make that available to your application. We already covered dependency injection another time, and we'll get into how to reference and load entity framework in an ASP.NET Core in a web application when we cover ASP.NET Core in our, I'm not sure if that's going to be our next series or the series after that. Okay, so I'm hard coding effectively here. Here's the database source I'm going to. I'm just going to create a connection string that says data source equals appdb.db. That's a SQLite database that's just going to be written to disk, and I use this thing options builder, and it's the input parameter up here. I'm going to use this options builder, and I'm using a special command here called use SQLite. Oh, come on. You're not going to give me the you make me sad. I'm not going to get the completion here in VS Code. Come on now. Yeah. That's just no. Let me close and reopen this. See, I've even got a thing waiting here. No, see, I tried to click into there. Yeah, there's an update waiting, so I have a feeling I've yeah. Do the update. You know what? I'm just going to jump into into Visual Studio 2022. Thank you. And we'll use it from over there. Up here. And I'm going to go into this folder. And sure, I'll open that. There it is. There's my blog app opening right now. Come on. Yeah, that's funny. My license will expire. There we go. So there you go. I've installed the SQLite provider, so I get this little handy method, extension method called useSQLite here, and you see all the information about it. It configures entity framework so that it uses the SQLite provider, and I'm providing the connection string. Here's how to go and connect to SQLite. And then I say, based on configuring options builder, and it passes in that connection information that it's a SQLite database, and here's where that database resides on disk, so we can go and work with that. All right. With just those couple of bits written, right? Yeah. Right, I'll .NET build again, and of course it builds properly. But let's actually generate that table for our blog post, write it to disk inside that database file, so we can start writing and interacting with blog posts. I'm going to take a look at chat here before I go and start talking about what are called migrations. Is it possible to migrate from one to the other? Migrate from, I need some more context. What's the best way to use stored procedures along with EF Core code first approach? I can show you that in just a little bit. Why do I prefer VS Code over Visual Studio 2022? I use a little bit of both. On these streams, I like to use VS Code because it allows me to work directly with the file system a little bit nicer than Visual Studio does. Where is it? There is a file explorer here that lets me view what's on disk. I feel like I can navigate around disk a little bit easier versus being in a solution and a workspace. When I'm giving these types of sessions, I want to be a little bit more free-flowing with how I generate code and how I interact with it. There's nothing wrong with one or the other. It's just personal preference and context of when and how things work. So yeah, see I feel like the what's it called? Sure, go ahead, do the restore. I bet you that's what I'm missing here. Yeah, okay. No, it's still not picking it up. No, I'm not going to get into it because... Oh, you know what? I know what this is doing. I know what this is doing. Show me this. Yeah. It's seeing the solution file, I believe, and getting caught up in that. Or not. Because I actually don't see that running at all. Yep. There we go. Turn green. That's better. That's what I was doing wrong. And there it is, use SQLite. I'm going to stick over here. Just because this is a little bit more than what I want to do today. All right. So I've got that. I've got the connection to my database defined here. Let's go and actually now generate what's called a migration to interact with this. And actually generate and manage our database. I agree, TG. Use stored procedures for more complicated queries when you need to join tables and do some interesting filtering and interactions there. Godfrey asks, do we require app settings JSON for a connection string if you decide to go ORM-less? What do you mean by ORM-less? I would use app settings if you are writing a connection to disk, but you can pass in your connection string from all kinds of places. Command line arguments, environment variables, Azure Key Vault, these types of things you can pass them in from. Do I recommend using a different database context as identity DB context or use the same context? I like to separate those. It's not bad to use just one, but I would separate those. You're hoping this project will be on Git? You're watching on YouTube. Just below here in the description, there's a link to the GitHub repository. Check it out. Click through there. It's already there. Let me see. Yeah, the solution file, that was what it was. You want to switch your database from Microsoft SQL to MySQL. Do I just change that options builder use statement, or is it more involved? Well, you got to get your data from one location to the other. Changing that options builder use statement should be all that you need to do, unless you've done some other platform-specific things, provider-specific things in how you use Microsoft SQL that aren't in MySQL. Things like, we've heard a lot of folks ask about temporal tables. It's not available over in MySQL. So if you're using those, you're going to need to figure out where your destination is and rewrite appropriately. Can you drop down to raw queries with EF Core? Yes, I'll show you that in a little bit. Yeah, VS Code is really where people who are new to .NET or are on, thank you, Chris, or on Windows, Linux or Mac are going to be working with this. Hey, Coding Bandit, you like sharing all the things? That's a Microsoft thing. Absolutely, share all the things. Make open source projects. Publish out on GitHub and have a good time publishing what you've built. Share it with friends on Microsoft Azure. Great cloud environment. Which one is a better practice, storing connection credentials in a config file or environment variable? Environment variable, then it's not sitting on disk. All right, got through the questions. Layla Codes It is here. How you doing there, my friend? That's our friend Layla Porter. Good to see you. So, let's talk about database migrations. Now, you don't really need database migrations with SQLite, but we're going to build these for this. Database migration is a a file that you generate that says, here's how the database should be structured for the current state of my code. In this way, your C# code ends up generating SQL statements, generating create table statements, alter table statements, create index statements that will be executed against the database. So let's do that. We're going to say .NET EF migrations add. So let's break this down. .NET, we're running our .NET command line tool. EF, we're using the entity framework set of tools. Migrations is the noun. That's the thing we're working with. Add, there's our verb, right? So these are always in the structure of noun, verb, right? We're going to take migrations and we're going to add to it. And let's just call this first, right? And what this will do, if I did everything right, did I do everything right? There we go. Is it's going to have a very concise set of status statements here. But I'm joking. You can have it be a little bit more verbose when you run these. But what it's really going to do that's important is over here in my file system. Look at this. Open editors, you go away. It's generated a migrations folder. And check out the names of these migrations. These are files that are being made available to you to help maintain state of your database. So here's first. I called it first. And you can see, look at that file. Look at that number over there. When you break it down, though, it's the date and time. And so this is the instructions to apply that first configuration to the database. Check it out. So protected override void up. Up means this is the method that's going to execute when I say apply this migration. So we're going to migrate up to this version. We're going to create a table called posts because I called my collection of blog posts posts. Okay, so that property name has been turned into a table. You go away. It's been turned into a table name right there. So this kind of SQL pseudo language is being generated and managed for us that says, here's how I want the table to be structured. Check it out. ID, title, published date, content. Those are all fields that I defined. And in SQLite, I have an integer for my ID. I have text fields for these, and they can be null or they can be, right? Look at this. This is a date time, but it's going to be stored in a text field, and it's not allowed to be null. So, okay, we can work with that. There's some things there that a database administrator might be cringing about, but in a SQLite database, in a little database file that's being written to disk, it's not that big a deal. And of course, we're defining a primary key constraint called PK posts, right? PK primary key underscore posts. That's the name of the table. So that's the convention for how it wants to name those. And it's pointing to the ID column, right? The ID property we defined up here. Now, this is a convention that you can use and take advantage of in Entity Framework Core. If you create a property called ID in your class, by default, that will become your primary key. You can also name other fields something ID, and that will be considered to be the primary key, particularly if it's the same name as the class. So if I called this blog post ID, that will be considered for becoming primary key. But if there is a property called just ID like that, that's the primary key that it will by default assign. But maybe you want to call it something else. Maybe you want to call this blog post unique ID, identifier. I don't know, right? Whatever. Or right? Maybe you want to call this the foo, whatever. You can force Entity Framework to recognize foo as the primary key by adding a by adding a key attribute up here with the appropriate using statement. Now you're forcing it to say, oh, foo is the ID. So we've stepped out of the convention, and now we're explicitly defining which field is the key, and there it is. Okay? Options. This is all about options and flexibility. Okay? So I generated that migration statement. So now let's update the database on disk. So I'll do that by saying .NET EF database update. And this will take all of the migrations that haven't been applied to the database, in this case, the one, and it's going to tell me I have an error here because I went and broke things. The name ID does not exist in the current context. Blog post CS. Oh. All right, do that again. That builds, right? Good. .NET EF database update. There it is, right there. Come on, do the thing. Build started, build succeeded. There we go. Applying migration. There it is. It applied that change to our database. And what that means is, look at that. We now have a database. Let's take a look at that. I believe, do I have? No, this. Do I have? I don't have a SQLite. Do I have? I thought I had a browser. No. Let me go grab. I had a SQLite browser installed. Extensions. SQLite. I had this installed on my other machine that I was testing with. Come on. Sure, give me. I don't remember if it was this one, but why not? Give it to me. Right? Open database. That one. And there it is, SQLite Explorer. So there's my database right there. Now look, I have two tables in it. Posts, the table that I defined to hold my blog posts, and look, it's got a bunch of fields there. And come on, scroll down. There we go. So move away. So ID, title, publish UTC, content. All the fields that I requested, they're in the database. But I've also got this other table here called EF Migration History. And this is how Entity Framework knows which migrations you have applied to the database and which ones you haven't. In this way, you can work with your own little instance, your own private little instance of the database. Over here on the side, this is Fritz's instance of the database while I'm in development, and I can update and maintain that separately from the rest of the database team. And when we're done and we have all of our migrations working, we can take all of those and apply them so that the changes are applied in order to the production database, all at one command at update time. So this contains information about exactly what's happened to the database. And you see it there, migration ID, and it shows here's the name of the migration that was applied. And it's .NET 6. It's Entity Framework Core 6 is the version of Entity Framework that generated this statement. That way, it knows how to handle if you shift versions. I've stepped away from chat here for a little bit. Let me catch up on what's going on over there. Let me scroll down and see what else is going on there. Oh, Layla, I hope you're having a fine day. I saw your messages there about NDC. How can in some instances migrations succeed while update fails and returns an error of failed executing DB command? Don't know. Once again, depends on your situation. The database may have changed independently from your migrations, and you're not now in full control of what's happened there. You may need to reverse engineer some of the content from the database to update your Entity Framework content so you can update your code first content and push it back across. Spicy Thunder. Yes, this is pre-recorded. Absolutely. It was pre-recorded on November 22nd, 2021 at 10:34 a.m. Eastern Time. Thanks so much. Thindall, developers never think DBAs are. Yes, their jobs are to make sure the database runs well. Database administrators, that's their job. Make sure your database runs well, which means your application runs well. Your database administrator should become your best friend. Help them because they're going to make your application look good. They can very easily move an index around and, gosh, that application is slow. We better find a better developer who knows how to optimize their code to work with the database better. Because my database is running great. Look, I can run queries. It runs fine. They can make you look bad. So, data annotations are not good conventions. Disagree. I disagree, Godfrey, because they are flexible and they work with many different database providers. Is Link good enough in .NET 6 for complicated queries, or are we still... There's always going to be a level of complicated query that you're going to want to hand off to the database for optimization and have it run over there first. When you start joining and filtering on child tables, that's when I would start looking at moving things over to a stored procedure or using T-SQL directly. But your typical query and get the top n number of records from this table with a where clause, use Entity Framework. It's going to get the same thing, and you don't have to generate and manage that T-SQL statement. Let me see here. Has anything changed regarding allowed null values in the database in EF Core? You tried migrating from Net 5 to Net 6. While your query was working as expected, before migration, you get a throw if null exception. Well, is nullability turned on in your project? Check that first. C# nullability is now something that we're trying to enable by default for new projects. What happens to conflicts in updates? You get an error message raised. How do we define a composite key? Asks Ren. Also, how to revert to previous changes. Let me show you how to update to previous changes. We'll start there. So if we say .NET, right? .NET database, we can say help here. What? .NET EF database. Say it that way. There we go. And if we say update help, there we go. You can specify exactly the migration you want to update to. So you can actually go back in time and say update to a previous version when you update the database, right? So if you don't specify a target migration, it'll update to the latest version. So I could go back and say update to, right, if I apply 2 or 3 more migrations, I can roll back and say update to first, right? If I rename this to foo, and we say, let's clear here, move things back up to the top. .NET EF migrations add new foo, right? So this is going to create, yep, build started. I know it failed, right? Because the blog post 14. Oh, it's right there. Right? Add that new foo. Here it goes. Right? Oh! Requires a primary key to be defined. So, to your other question, well, how do I define the key somewhere else? Well, I mentioned you could define the key here. That works. I can also define it over in my DB context over here. I can say, is it options builder? No, it's on model configuring. There's another method you can override. And it's called on model creating. And I can specify in here, come here, you. Model builder entity, right? Blog post has key, and I can specify now with an expression the fields that make up that key. So I can say, move that up, right? b.foo. Now I've defined over here the database structure. Some folks like to move their database structures, things like indexes and keys, in here instead of on the object, because that means that this object, this content, is this file does not carry database-specific information, and all the things necessary for working with my database are all in one place here in the DB context file. That's a cool strategy. That works great. And it's really a question of getting the data, getting the information you need to be an effective developer, a productive developer, where you're going to be looking for it. So I like to keep it as much as possible in this file with my entity objects. So when I want to look up information about the entity, right, about that thing I'm storing in the database, it's all in this file, and I can easily see it right there. Some folks think it makes sense to look over here because now when I need to see configuration for one table or another, it's all here in one file. And there are some folks who will go even further and take this line and they will turn it into a, well, I don't want to do a local function. They'll turn it into a method. There we go. Right? That's fine. Right, and maybe I call this configure blog posts. So now I have I might have a bunch of these configure methods here, so I can scan through real quickly and find, well, go find configure blog posts, go find configure authors, and I can see how those tables are configured in each one of those methods. It's all a question of how you want to abstract and structure your code. And there is no wrong answer. All right. Taking a look, a bunch more comments coming through here. Should we use record struct or just class for our entities class? Yeah, records or structs, particularly structs doesn't work. But records, I don't think you'll get it there. Why not use MS SQL local DB instead of SQLite? Because it doesn't work on Linux and Mac. Date only with databases in .NET 6. I can't speak towards that, Andy. Haven't tried that yet. You have no clue how your Twitch unfollowed me? Fix that. You should all be following. Click the follow button down here if you're watching on Twitch. Click, 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 click. Do it now. Don't wait. Go click it. Make with the clicking. Go. What's his Drake Star Dragon? Yeah, Twitch does sometimes do that kind of thing on their own. What's built into Visual Studio? Can migrations also have their own seed data and/or data transformations? Yes, you can seed data, and there is a method you can use to seed data. Jose already answered that question. Apart from not needing to learn SQL, what's the advantages of EF? There you go. You don't have to learn how to use SQL, and you can get some pretty basic interactions with the database for free. Will there ever be a C# IDE on Android? Are you kidding? Are you kidding? You can open VS Code in a browser. So you already have it. Go to github.com, browse to your favorite repository, hit dot, and it'll open in a browser for you. Congratulations. Feel free. Okay, good. Moving on. Because I've only got about 15 minutes left here before they kick me off the air. So I've defined that. I can add my migration now called new foo. Did I have that build started? Come on, this should work. Build succeeded, and we have that migration. So now if I say .NET EF database update, build started, build succeeded, applied migration. So I'll go back over here, and if we look in the migrations folder, one more time. I'm going to leave that over there. There. Right, so there's new foo. And here's what the new foo migration does. Rename column. That's what I did. I renamed it from ID to foo. And here's the down method. What happens when we want to downgrade from this? Well, we're going to rename foo back to ID. And if we look inside the migration history over here, you'll see it applied both migrations. Right? It applied first, and then it applied new foo. And if we take a look at the posts table over here, let's refresh. There it is. Foo is right there. All right. So to the question of, well, how do I go back? All right, so let's do it. .NET EF database update, and we're going to update back to first. Build started. Build succeeded. Reverting migration. I'll go back over here. And there it is. It's back to ID. And if I go down to migrations history, it only has the first record in there. All right. So that's how you roll forward and apply migrations, and how you roll back and downgrade from migrations. And I can also now do .NET EF migrations, and I believe it's remove, or is it delete? Remove. So we didn't like naming it foo, so let's remove it. .NET EF migrations remove. Build started. Build succeeded. Gone. And I'll make sure I rename this back to ID. All right, and over here, this, I will get rid of all of the on-model creating. So, last over here, I need to change that back to ID. All right, so I have now a way to store blog posts in the database. We have about 13 minutes left. I've got a bunch more content I want to get through. Video is available on YouTube. You can rewind and go back if you'd like. Can you tell the app to look for the right version of the database and then upgrade or downgrade accordingly? No. My pronouns are he, him. And I don't have a problem if folks assume that. If you are on Twitch and you're watching over there, I do use the pronouns plugin on my channel, so that you can share your pronouns appropriately in chat, and I can see them and use them appropriately with you as well. So I encourage you, check out the pronouns plugin. It's a browser plugin you can use that works great with Twitch if you want to make sure you're using pronouns appropriately. But here in this informal setting, I don't mind if folks assume which pronouns that I'm using. No, I'm not going to talk about struct record and struct class. Sorry, that happened last time when we talked about C# 10. I'm going to get to database first. I promise. I promise. I am running out of time quickly here. Okay, so I have my object here. I want to start putting objects, putting content into it, into that table. So let me go back over program. Let's get rid of this. Let's create a database context. I'll call it CTX equals new app. Where'd it go? AppDB context. Right? Why don't you see that? Yes, using my blog app. Thank you. Good. Let's create a new post equals new blog post. I'm not going to specify an ID. I want it to generate that for me. But I'll make the title my first post. Content. This is my first blog post. Narf. Published UTC equals date time UTC now. Okay. So I've got a new blog post. Now, to put that into the database, you're going to use commands and properties, C# commands and properties, that you're already used to. You already know how to work with. So ctx posts, add, new post, ctx, save changes. That's it. That's all you need in order to create a blog post, put it into the collection, and then save it. So it didn't return any data because I didn't tell it to write out any data. But if I open SQLite Explorer over here, take a look, there's my table. My first post, there's published UTC, content, this is my first blog post, NARF. Fantastic. We just wrote a record to the database. I can get data out. I want to publish. I want to take a look at some of that content. Let's get the titles of the most recent 5 blog posts. So let's call this recent blog posts equals, I'm going to reach into context. I want to look at the posts. And let's say order by descending. I want to order by, and I can, right? Remember, we did link a couple weeks ago. We know how to do this. And now it looks, I'm using link to work with the whole collection of posts, but it's not actually running here in my application. It turns, Entity Framework turns these link statements, these link clauses, into a SQL statement that it sends to the database. The database executes it and then returns my data. Check this out. Order by descending, p.published UTC, and I'm going to say take 5, even though there's only 1 there right now. So it's going to do that, and let's cast this. I want to say to array async is really what I want to do. Give me my using statement for that. And I can await on this. So now I can do a for each. Come on, for each. Thank you. Item in recent blog post. And I can say console write line. Item dot title. And that will now make the query, bring back that collection, and write out. Right now there's only 1 post. So let's add another post in here. Right? Now nothing says I need to save changes right away here. Right? So I could say my second post. And I can add another post here like this. Third post. Yet another post. 7 minutes, plenty of time to go here. Watch this. I like to blog. Okay. And this is third post. Now I'm adding 2 posts and I'm not saving changes until the end. That's okay. You can do that. It will create those objects, put them into the collection, and when it calls save changes, that's when it actually sends the command to the database to write those to disk. The insert statements that you might be familiar with running when you interact with the database using T-SQL. But here, let's go and uncomment this. Now when I run, yet another post, my second post, first post, in descending order from most recent first. Fantastic. So I've got a way to get posts out of the database. I have a way to add posts to the database. If I want to update, you can fetch an item. You can fetch them by that primary key and make an update and interact with it at that point. So let's do a quick update. Right? Let's rename that second post. So let's say second post equals, and I can await ctx posts, and I'm going to say, right, find. Find will allow me to specify the key value. Key value is 2. It was post number 2. Yeah, right. Find is not asynchronous, is it? Nope. It's going to return a blog post. Fantastic. So I went and I found that one blog post. Let's change it so I know that that's a thing. I should test here or something, but I'm not. Title equals second post is the best. And now I can say CTX save changes. And you know what? Then let it go and get all my data. All right, run that again. So it's going to run the update, save the changes, and then filter it. And there it is. Now its second post is the best. What happened there? There's a little bit of change tracking going on under the scenes. When you go and get data from your database context, it watches the changes to those objects cached in memory so that it knows what things have changed in the objects when you change fields and the like, so that you can then call save changes. An entity framework behind the scenes will go and take all of those changes you made and turn those into update statements and send them back to the database. Now, I can also see some of those queries by saying, where is it? ToQuery string in here. And it will actually generate that log statement that I want to interact with. And I can write it out to the console and see exactly what the query looks like that it's executing. I can also go over it into appdb context, and I believe it's in here. I can say log2 or use logger factory and tell it, here's how I want you to log your interactions. If you want to be able to see how Entity Framework is generating and working with those interactions. Finally, you can also do delete statements in here. Of course you can do delete statements. So let's do this. Let's go find that third post. And I can say CTX posts remove. There it is, remove. And there, I can specify it right there. Second post, and it will remove it. It's a second post, even though it's got the third ID. Run that again, and we'll only have 2 posts there. So we've added, we've read, we've updated, and we've deleted. We've got 3 minutes left. That's where I'm going to call it for today. This was just a beginner. We just touched on the basics. I didn't even get into relational stuff because we had lots of really great questions coming in. Let me head back over to the main screen and I'll answer a couple more questions as we wrap things up here today. Whew! Whew! So much going on. Right? And my microphone isn't staying up. There we go. We're over here now. At what point is the read from the database executed? When you call to array or find or save changes, that's when the database question is interacted with. Sorry, I didn't get to the database first. But that's definitely something that you can do as well. That's another command where I did .NET EF database update. There's a generate command you can call in there as well. Sorry, I'm not going to get into the join. There is a sample in the sample code that's loaded out there on GitHub that you can take a look at. We are at 10:59. Thank you so much, everybody that's out there watching on Learn TV. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. I'm going to answer 1 or 2 more questions here. When am I going to continue this series? I continue this series every Monday morning. We'll be talking more about, I'm not sure if we're going to go into ASP.NET or Blazor or Maui next. I got to figure that out, but we'll have another session next week talking about answering all kinds of questions from you and interacting and building cool samples together. Will I continue in EF Core? Probably not. No. Maybe. No, you know what? Let's go a little bit further. I did cut that very short. Let's go in a little bit further on EF Core next time, since I'm not quite sure where I want to go next. on the next series. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, hope you check out some more great videos that we have on YouTube. Check out the description below. There's links out there for you to get involved with the GitHub repository, for you to download samples like the one we worked on today. And of course, there's all kinds of great other videos here on the channel, including the full playlist for this series, going back to the first episode in August 2020. Ooh, remember 2020? We did a thing then. Those of you that are watching on Twitch, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and it's time for a raid. Let's get us connected with somebody else out there on the big Twitch TV network. If you're watching on YouTube, we're going to be cutting off in just a few seconds here. We're going to make sure that folks on Twitch get connected with another live stream and see some really cool things that are going on out there. And taking a peek around the horn here, let me see. What else is going on? What else is going on? My goodness. I see some folks coming online now. Let's get you connected with... I want to get you connected with a friend who's playing Minecraft. I don't mind rating somebody playing Minecraft. He's a good friend. It's a pretty clean stream, and it's gonna scare the patootie out of him. He's not gonna be expecting this. Friends, we're gonna go check out. We're gonna raid Jester 1147. If you're over there on Twitch, I hope you enjoy the raid. I hope you check out Jester. Let him know how much you enjoy Minecraft and see some of the cool stuff that he's building. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Check out the rest of the shows that we have the rest of the day here today. Coming up later tonight, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2200 UTC, we're going to teach you how to build your first application with Blazor. It'll be my friend John Galloway and I talking through the Blazor Learn module. My name is Jeff Fritz. I'll see you later today and tomorrow over on the CSharpFritz channel. Take care.